brought to you by Health Plans, your Medicare plans, insurance solutions, and resource agency. We have a variety of plans and products that fit your needs, benefit requirements, and budget, with many low or no-cost premium plans, zero co-pays, and much more. Our licensed benefits advisor's priority is your health and well-being. Call us today and book your no-obligation consultation. 1-929-367-5269.
Folks, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio, with your host, Hurricane H. New day, new show, new topic, excellent topic. So you need to listen to this, you need to watch this. And my guest today is someone that's been on our show, someone that is playing on our, radio, TV, you name it, he's on it already with his own podcast. But today I want to introduce you once again, the one and the only Liam Naden. And he's a speaker, teacher, writer, a researcher. He helps you understand the process for creating true success in your life by understanding how to use your brain the right way. And actually, our show before was about that. So overcoming your problems, achieving your goals, and ending frustrations. He's also an experienced marriage and relationships coach and author of a new book, and that's where we are today. We're bringing the new book to you, and the content of the book, and the message of the book, and the tools in the book. And before I announce actually the name of the book, he is also a host of a couple of podcasts that are available everywhere, also on iHealth Radio and the network, YouTube, you name it, he's out there, and it's really good. And today's topic is no other than marriage and counseling, as opposed to marriage counseling. So I love the title of the book. So Marriage and Counseling, the 6 commitments that heal and transform love without talking or working on the problems. So Liam teaches couples and individuals to do, as the book title suggests, achieve true happiness in their marriage or relationship by doing what works rather than focusing on what doesn't work. And we're going to talk about that today. And that's what we're going to talk about. That's it. So without any further ado, Liam, how are you, man? Long time no see. We've been in connection. I love your stuff. Today, it's a great day. Your book is out, I believe, right? We're ready for the big publishing here?
We're in pre-release at the moment. So,
all right.
Yeah, so it's almost there. Yeah,
that's it. Well, I mean, these are great moments, and it's a great achievement. And so I want to commend you and thank you and congratulate you at the same time for all the work that you do, and definitely for this achievement. And I know I've listened to your podcast, about marriage, and of course the brain piece, and how people can understand, how to function, in a different way, and really tap into that. And in the previous show, you've given us a whole new world of how to process our thoughts and how to work correctly and really operate in this world, because it's crazy, right? And today, we're going to talk about where a lot of people potentially struggle or try to maybe just do better. And again, we live in society. Marriage is part of life, and some people are single. They might eventually get into this particular situation. But you have been talking about this for years, and it led you to writing this book. And by the way, is this the first book that you've written about this?
It's my first major book. I've written a number of smaller books which are on Kindle, but this is really bringing together a decade or more of my experience and working with people and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And I've called it Marriage Uncounseling because, unfortunately, marriage counseling, even though there's some wonderful people involved, but in counseling, most of the people who've come to me over the years, one of the first things they've said is, I tried counseling and it didn't work. And in fact, the statistics show there's up to an 80% failure rate for marriage counseling. So I thought I really want to get the record straight there about what does work, because it's crazy that we have this idea, like everybody thinks, well, I've got problems in my marriage or my relationship, need to go and do some counseling. But it's not the right thing for most people, or for the majority of people, as the statistics show. So my whole mission over the last decade has been to show people what really works in relationships. And it turns out that it's quite different to what most people are doing. And that's why most people are struggling and having problems, sadly.
Well, first of all, I mean, just the concept of marriage and relationships is very complex. And you're right. I mean, people have, they get together, they love each other, and then things start breaking out somehow. And I mean, it's crazy. I mean, you mentioned about 80% people going to counselors not working, but in general, the divorce rate is just, off the roof, across the world right these days. It doesn't matter what culture, it doesn't matter where you are. I think that thing is just, keeping getting worse and worse and worse. Now I know you started this before. You started actually talking about these things and helping people and counseling and coaching people, not counseling, but helping them. And then really your strategy is different. And you've written, again, these little pieces of advice in the past, and you put it all in one true, this is like the go-to book, right? It's like you want to learn how to prevent things eventually and not get into it, right? Not get into the problem where it's too late. Now you got to try to figure out how to patch things back. You're doing this in the long run. So let's break that down first. I mean, first of all, I love the word, the actual name, Marriage Uncounseling. And it's like, you don't need counseling. You can do this, right? I mean, that's how I'm reading it right now. And it's difficult though. I mean, I'm married, and it's a relationship that you have to maintain. There's so much stuff that goes on. Sometimes I've been married 20 years, and sometimes people are like, how did you do it? There's a lot of work on both sides, right? I'm not just a picnic, and that's how it works. And so you have sometimes to, the two parties have to do a lot of work. But it's important to break down some of the reasons behind sometimes of the issues, what happened, to people, and why they get into a point where it's kind of too late. Hopefully today you'll guide us towards how do we not even get there? And I think that is an important thing. It's like preventative everything. Like we talk preventative medicine, preventative mental health. This is preventative, relationship advice. So let's talk about that. What is what do you think that in your opinion, what are the main reasons people struggle in their marriages?
Well, there's quite a few different reasons, really. And one of them is the complexity. If you look at the bigger picture, it's a little bit like what you said. There's so much pressure on people now in their life in general. I was reading the other day that in 1970, the average person was exposed to about 600 or 700 advertising messages per day. And the number now is up to between 6,000 and 10,000. So your brain is being bombarded. That's marketing messages per day. So your brain is being bombarded constantly with all of these outside pressures and all these ideas and all of this noise. And amidst all that pressure, one of the first things that goes is our marriage or our relationship, because that if it's not strong, if it's not built on the right foundations, and if it's not operating in the right way, cracks are going to start to show up just from the sheer pressure of the outside world. And of course, everybody has lots of pressure on them as well in terms of their maybe their financial situation or their career or their business. All of these outside pressures put a direct pressure on our marriage or on our relationship. And there's another couple of reasons why I think most people struggle. And it is, unfortunately, I think most people they would say their marriage or their relationship is not as good as they'd like it to be, or they think it could be. And one of the other reasons, of course, is because of our expectation today of what a marriage actually is. If you look through most of human history, a marriage really was a social contract. It was a practical thing. It was about two people. It wasn't actually to do with love, particularly at all.
That is true.
In fact, in many societies or areas of society, you didn't get your love in your marriage. You'd have somebody else who provided that. But your marriage was like a political contract or a legal contract that gave you stability and security and certainty, so that you could bring up children, you could own property, you could do all those sorts of things. So this blending of not only a marriage providing all of those things, a legal framework for you to live your life, but also an emotional framework where you got the love that you wanted and the intimacy and the connection with another person. We've mixed those two things up together, I should say. And it's a good thing, but it adds a whole new layer of complexity to what and really not just complexity, but expectation. People that these days, they don't just want a marriage where it's, they've got a house together and a family together and a career or a business and food coming in and someone, the practical things. They want the love, they want the connection, the intimacy with another person. So that brings a whole lot of stuff to a marriage that means we really have to deal with it in a different sort of way. And the other big reason most people struggle, or it's not where they would like to be, is whoever taught us how relationships work? Really? Nobody. We might pick up a book here and there when things start going wrong. That's the first time we start wondering, well, how do I make relationships work? But no one's really told us how they work. And so what show have we got of making them run smoothly, if you like? And not only haven't we been taught how to make a relationship work, but what we know, or what we think we know, so much of it is wrong. We've got all of these ideas that we've heard from our friends or family or whatever about what a relationship is and what it involves. And most of those things are wrong. In actual fact, I want to pick you up on one thing you said that I think is quite controversial. You said marriage takes a lot of work. But the thing is, it doesn't need to. A marriage doesn't need to take a lot of work. But we all have this belief, relationship's difficult, you've got to work hard, you're going to have rough times, and all of those sorts of things. But a clue is to why that's not true is if you think back to the early days of your listeners, think back to when you first got together with the person you're now married to or you're in a relationship with. Was it a struggle then? Were you in that relationship going, I have to make this work and this is really hard work and everyone knows it's difficult and we've got lots of problems and no relationship's perfect? I don't think you were thinking like that. Most people, when I ask this, they go, no, of course we were just having a good time. Things were great. We didn't have any problems. And if we had any miscommunication or little disagreements, well, we just got over it. And we got back to having, and it was such a wonderful time. And people are trying to recreate that, and they should recreate that, and it's what they can have again. But you need to know what you were doing that actually created that in the first place. And most people don't realize and don't know what they were doing, but they were just doing it. And they think, it can't be like that again, because relationships, become stale, and it can never be like that. But it can be, because there is a certain group of people in society, a small group, who do have great relationships after 30 years. They act like they still met each other yesterday. They've still got a fantastic relationship. And it's not a question of luck. It's a question, they're doing something differently. They're operating their relationship in a different way to what most people are. And most of the time they don't know what they're doing differently, but they're not doing all of the things that everyone's been told that you have to do, that you have to work hard on it, and you have to work through your problems. And that's, of course, why I've called the book Uncounseling, because the subtitle is why working on your problems and talking about them doesn't work and what you should do instead. And I'm sure most people would say, if I really think about it, the more I talk, if I have problems in my marriage, we talk about it, we go to counselors, we try and work on the problems, we try and sort it out. But things somehow don't really get any better. It's just always a struggle. And it's because those are the wrong things to do. They weren't the things you did when things were going well. And it sounds a bit contradictory or counterintuitive, but it is, because the way you heal your marriage, the way you create and transform your relationship and build your love is not through focusing on what's wrong with it, because that's not what you did when you started out, and it's not the way you should carry on.
Okay, so we got to unpack all that. That's a lot of stuff there. So
sorry to throw all that at you at once, but
no, that's awesome actually. So there's a few things. I mean, you talked about like all the pressures and how like we are taught stuff, and you're right. Like everybody, especially today more than ever, you in the movies, about relationship, what should go, how it should be, your friends, input, this, that, the other, the parents' input, financial stuff. There are pressures. You need to have this, you need to have that. All these things are kind of like, becoming like the trends. This is how you're supposed to do it. I mean, and we talk about marriage. I mean, it's the same thing about raising kids these days. It's the same thing about business. A lot of things are being kind of almost, in a way, it's manipulated because it's just a campaign
for sure
on a particular style that that you're being driven towards, and it creates those things like, oh, well, like for example, simple thing. I mean, do I wear a ring? Don't I wear a ring? Right? You're supposed to wear a ring, right? Who says you're supposed to wear it? It's a tradition. Why that tradition happened? Well, we got to make some industry happen, right? So there's some things.
Yeah.
Does that really, the ring made the commitment? You could take the ring and do all kind of crazy stuff, right? And that happens all the time. The ring is not really but it is part of what society knows today. And just an example, right? There's so many things. Now, I know you said when I said about the work, that you have to put in a relationship. The reason I said that is because the work doesn't have to be bad work. It's not like, it's your relationship. I mean, you said it the best. You're in love, you're having fun. And I'm not talking about, to your point, in history, it was not all, you can marry and then you kind of fall in love later. That's how most of if you did. I mean, that was in history, in all cultures, it was kind of like that kind of thing. It was just, to your point, is you marry because you have to be married. Now it's different. And there are certain almost expectations by everybody in your family, your friends. And listen, I have a daughter, I have a son, and they're young and they already know all the stuff how they're supposed to be. They already told what to do and how to do it and what is the real way to do it. But there's no real way because everybody has a different way. You hear about sometimes I have this discussion sometimes with people well, I can't get married. Why? I need to do the big wedding. I need to do this. I need to do that. I need a diamond ring. I need this. But do you love your person? Yes. Are you cool with that person? Yeah. Do you want to live with them and have a good time with them? Do you need all that stuff? That could be sometimes just because of that stuff, things go bad. We don't agree on the marriage place, the food, this, that. It could be a lot of different things. So it's crazy. It starts from the beginning. But you're right. Before all that, nothing happens. I mean, I've known people that have dated for years, and then they married and then divorced 2 months later. You live with each other. That's the other thing. You're having a great time. And the minute that you get married, it's like the world changes. But what happened? It's just a paper. It's just a document that you sign technically, and it's a commitment. But the commitment you had already. So and then there's also the struggle about financials, and who gets what, and so people are already worrying about it. You're thinking about all that stuff before you get in, and now you're almost observing these little things because you're watching. Well, what happens is this. So there's supposed to be a trust factor in between the two individuals. There's supposed to be a lot of supporting each other in every way and shape, because sometimes you're going to have difficult times, right? So it's amazing because I mean the stuff you said is people are watching right now, listening. This is not something new. We all know this, yet we somehow fail it. And I think you and I, we had this discussion before. I cruise a lot, so there's always a marriage show, love and marriage show, and the love and marriage show is they pick 3 couples, one that is newlywed, one that has been mid 20 years, 25 years marriage. Then they pick the oldest marriage or couple, and the oldest the better. I mean, and it's funny because they ask the same questions, and you can see a discrepancy between the different groups in just how they know each other well, how they actually remember everything, how their relationship, and how they actually working and managing their relationships over time. And you can see sometimes the new ones, they're not synchronized well. Yet they're the ones who actually are probably in the most loving relationship. The mid guys, they're there, they have kids, they're working, and the eldest couple is the one that actually got it down back to a science. They already know what to do, how to do it, and they made it. I've seen people actually married 60 years plus. In those shows, and it's awesome. And when you see it, it's wow, and sometimes they ask what made you do this? She's always right. I mean, that was just one of the answers that make everybody laugh. But really, it's just obviously I know that it's not how it works, but the fact is, it's somebody is taking that, right? And the approach is just give and take. It is a lot. To your point, it's being in love, being the same way you were every day. It's just a new day, and you keep that relationship. But that's not how everybody gets it, though. It doesn't work that way in real life. It's unfortunate. So I know in your book, you've unpacked that and you've given some tips. And there's the 6, you call them the 6 commitments, right? That's the rule. So let's talk about the 6 commitments. What I mean, obviously, commitment word is big, right? So what are those 6 things that will make the people in the best way and shape and form in their relationship? And avoid any counseling or any further stuff, because to your point, you can counsel yourself, by just making sure you work on things before they happen and be in agreement in a lot of things. So what's your advice there, and what are those commitments?
Well, the commitments come down to one thing really, and I'm not going to go through all of them because they require a bit more explanation. But the reason I came up with these 6 commitments is because everybody thinks about marriage as a commitment. You say, I'm committed to my marriage, but what are you actually committed to? If I was to ask somebody, if I ask that question, what do you say you're committed to your marriage, but what does it actually mean? What are you committed to? And they'd say, well, I'm committed to my wife or my husband, or I'm committed to loving them, or I'm committed to making it work, or whatever. But the problem with all of those sorts of commitments is, firstly, they're a bit vague, and secondly, they're very much a commitment to somebody else. And the problem is, when you commit to somebody else, is you're giving away your power, and you're basically saying, I'm just going to give to you what I think I should give you, and I'm also giving it to you irrespective of what you think. And one of the biggest problems that I have is that I deal with is people when they're having problems in their marriage. One of the people is saying, I'm really committed, I love you, I'm committed to our marriage, I'll do whatever it takes, I'll never let you go, all of those sorts of things. And the other person is saying, well, the reason we're actually having problems is because you're not really listening to me, you're not really considering what I want, you're not making me feel good, and you telling me all of the things that you're committed and how you feel, that's about you, that's not about me. This is the other person. So what you have to do when you look at commitment is you have to define what you're actually committed to. And the thing you need to commit to most of all, and this is what the 6 commitments really sum up, you need to commit to being the sort of person that your husband or wife would want to be married to. That's really what it comes down to. So instead of you trying to change their mind and be upset if you have problems and try and fix things, you need to say, I need to commit to myself to being the best version of myself that I can be. Because when we got together, who they fell in love with really was, and who I fell in love with as well, was the essence of who they are. Now, I mightn't have known them that well when we got married, but I fell in love with the essence of who they really are. So if you want your husband or your wife to be attracted to you, which is what you need if you want to keep your marriage strong, is you need to be the essence of who you are, so that they can continue to connect with the essence of who you are. Because when you love someone else, you love the essence of who they are. That's what you first fall in love with. So you need to commit to yourself to be the best version of yourself, so that whoever you're with is going to want to be with you. You can't change their mind or talk them into doing something they want to do. All you can do is make them want to stay with you, to want to be with you. And all of the things like lack of communication, arguments, all of those other problems, when you've got someone who doesn't want to do those negative things, then you're not going to have them in your marriage. Just like you did in the early days. You didn't want to argue. You didn't want to disagree. If you had a misunderstanding, you wanted to find out what the other person was thinking. You wanted to really understand, and you didn't need to do any communication course to find out. You'd ask them, so what do you mean? I'm really not sure. But you were also being your best version of yourself. You were being attractive. And most people, when they come into, and this is why talking about problems doesn't really help, and working on your problems doesn't really help, because what's that got to do with attraction? How much fun is that? And one of the things I say in the book is, whatever you focus on, you're going to get more of. And that's the law of nature. Whatever you focus on, you get more of, and it grows. So if you're going to focus on problems, if you're going to focus on what's wrong, if you're going to focus on being unhappy and not listening and not being fun and all those sorts of things, then that's what you're going to get more of. You're going to get more problems. So the commitment comes down to saying, essentially, I am committed to being the best version of myself, which means being my most attractive, being a great communicator, and being someone who's not afraid. We talked about fear the last time we talked, I don't know if you remember.
Yep.
And so that the person I'm with says, I want to be with this person and I don't want to talk about problems. We don't really have any problems. I can see how great they are and they can see how great I am, and we're just enjoying being together. Problems are a distraction. We don't need to have them. So that's really what I think the main commitment people need to make. But we've never been taught about this, have we? We've never been taught about, we've all been taught, well, if you have a problem, you need to try and figure out the solution to that problem. And that's why most of the time that doesn't work, that approach. Wouldn't it be better if you could say, hey, we had a bit of a problem, or we had a miscommunication, or it doesn't matter. We still want to be with each other. We still love each other. Let's get on with it and have fun. It's a lot simpler.
So Liam, we talked about some of the factors that get people to this point, right? And all the influences. But maybe is there anything that in your, I guess, years of expertise here that you found that maybe people rush into marriage or relationships because they really didn't understand each other in the first place? I mean, maybe they meet each other, something was there, there's a spark, and maybe it's intimacy, whatever, and then they just like rush into it, and then they don't even understand each other well enough, and then therefore they're in a marriage, and now everything is built off really, there's no foundation, and then ultimately the rest of it is just, you can't build a skyscraper with no foundation. Everything's going to crumble. So,
well, that's one of the things I talk about extensively in the book, is that you can't build a cathedral made out of straw in a swamp.
I love that.
You need to have the right foundations if you want to build something that is going to last. And the reason people rush into relationships, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I think we have this idea, I've got a whole chapter in the book on mistakes, what mistakes actually are. Again, we've been taught all of the wrong things about what mistakes are. Mistakes are great. They're learning experiences. They're how you grow. They're how you become a better person. They're a gift. And I think one of the problems is it's not so much we rush into relationships and the pattern often is we rush into a relationship and we try to make it work. And the reason we do that is because we're afraid. We're afraid of losing this relationship with this person. And the only reason we're afraid of losing that relationship with that person is because we don't think that we deserve anything better, or that something else better might not come along. So we just grab this person. So what it's not about you don't know the other person. You don't know yourself. You don't know yourself well enough to say, I don't need to be afraid of, and I don't need to settle for less than what I really want. People say, oh, well, I married them because they were like 60% good enough. I thought, we can, everyone knows relationships are hard and you have to work on it and they're not perfect. So this person's good enough, and if we have problems, we'll just overcome them. But that's all based on fear. They're afraid that, and there might be other reasons for their fear, that their family might say, well, you can't give up on this relationship. They might feel like they're a failure if they don't carry through with the relationship. But these are all fears and misunderstandings about who they are. If they thought, is this the right relationship for me? If it's not, there's a better one around the corner. I'll wait for that. And that's just the way it is. And if anyone else has a problem with that, about what I do, that's their problem. I'm not afraid of what other people think. So if people took that approach, then probably a lot of the relationships wouldn't get formed in the first place. Because you're right, a lot of my work with people has been, they come to me and say, I really want to fix this marriage. And it doesn't take me long to realize it's another one built on a swamp out of straw. And they've been trying to build something out of it for 30 years sometimes. It's just the wrong relationship. I've got a whole chapter in the book about how to know whether you're in the right relationship for a start. And most people don't understand how to do that. But it is all based on a fear. And this is the tragedy, is that when people are in the wrong relationship, firstly, they don't realize it. And secondly, they're too afraid to leave it because of all of the negative connotations to ending a relationship that have been created throughout society. As I say, about being a failure and something wrong with you. You didn't work hard enough, you gave up, and everyone knows marriage is for life and all of those sorts of things. And those sort of things don't really help people. but you can help yourself a lot if you work on yourself first to say, I'm not going to get myself in that situation. I don't need to get myself into that situation. I will wait for the right person, and I'll know who the right person is based on not just how I feel, but my knowledge of who I am myself, and therefore what I need in somebody else to complement me, to give me a happy relationship and a happy life.
So Liam, thank you for that.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does actually. But that takes me back to something you said. People don't understand themselves well enough to start with. So
Yeah.
what should someone watching right now, to look for? What would they look for right now in themselves to try to understand? I mean, because it's almost like you have to dig deep down and say, like, what are my cues, what I'm supposed to really be doing here, and so on and so forth. Are there any guidances that we can give people to actually just at least have them reflect to see whether they're correct, they're proper, they have the right, tools to actually even identify whether they can manage a relationship or not, what type of relationship and who that person might be?
Okay, well, there's only really two things, or two main things, that you need to know. Firstly, what makes you feel good? What makes you feel good? What feelings do you like to have? Are you somebody who likes to be out there doing exciting things and with adrenaline pumping and variety, doing something new and different every day? Do you see yourself backpacking around South America and with a tin of baked beans, or whatever you call it over there? Are you that, or are you the sort of person who values security? You want safety, serenity. You'd rather be on a little plot of land somewhere growing some vegetables and having a couple of cows or some animals and just enjoying the same thing every day. Now, they're two extremes, but you have to know what feelings you want in your life and what sort of things give you those feelings, so that when somebody else comes along, they need to match they need to match your personality, or what we call values, what's important to you. And so many times that's not what happens. I know it's what's happened to me in the past. I've been in relationships with people who had completely different values. I'm the sort who wants to be out traveling and excited and doing something new every day. And I've been with people who didn't like that. And so that's the first thing you need to understand, so that becomes like your filter. And when you really start to understand yourself and work to understand yourself a lot better, that filter becomes natural. You start to see people more clearly as to whether they really are suitable for you, rather than just being caught up with somebody else. And that comes to the second thing you need to know, and that is, what are your fears? What are you afraid of in your life? Are you afraid of not being loved? Are you afraid that you won't find the right person to have a relationship with? Are you afraid of what people might say if you do something? Are you afraid of uncertainty? Are you afraid of criticism? What are you afraid of? Because whatever you're afraid of is going to hold you back as well. And many times we enter into a relationship and even a marriage based on our fears. We talked about this earlier. I'm afraid that I've met this person and they're keen on me and I'm pretty keen on them, but if I don't carry through with this, I'll be criticized, or I'll be on my own and alone, or I'll never find somebody else, and I'll feel a failure, and other people will tell me I'm a failure. So you need to know what all those fears are in advance, and what you really need to do is start working on eliminating them. And I've got a whole chapter on the book which has got a process on how to identify your fears and really get rid of them. Because if you operate based on fear, we talked about this in terms of how the brain works last time, but if you operate on fear, you're just going to be doing the wrong things. And that accounts for, I'd say 99% of the struggle that people face in their life, including their marriage, is because they're afraid of the consequences of what might happen. And so those two things: know who you are, know what's important to you, really work that out in advance. And secondly, say, what am I afraid of that's preventing me from just allowing the right person to show up in my life and allowing my life to unfold in the right way, and knowing that everything's going to be great, and pursuing my goals, pursuing my dreams, pursuing what I want to do, rather than worrying about what other people think, or what I think, or what might go wrong, or what expectations I should have.
Well, thank you, Liam. But so let's say someone listening to you right now. I mean, I'm an worker myself. Great. I know my values and I need to find someone with the same values, right? Got to be a perfect match. But now the question is, you meet people and sometimes there's a facade. You don't really know the people sometimes until you live with them. So how do you kind of counteract that? Like, how do you work against that? Because you're not going to see that. I mean, is there something to like a probe system that you can do a discovery kind of concept? I mean, I know people date sometimes, but even if you date, you're not gonna potentially know what to look for because people can be deceptive sometimes, or without any reason. They may not be intentionally deceptive. They just, they're showing like everybody's looking good the first time, right? Everybody's like being at the best, and you can gauge people. And I see you, I like you, you love me, whatever, all those things happen. And then people try to always be the best in their best behavior because they still want the relationship. To your point, they're afraid, they don't want to dismiss that relationship. And so they're just trying and putting all these little phony type of personalities or situations. And then you fall into that trap. Let's say I am perfectly aware of me, and I'm expecting certain things, but then that person is really not who they were stating or demonstrating that they were at the time where we were just having that initial engagement. So how do you tackle that out? What advice would you give to people?
Well, again, you've got to dig in under the hood, down to the foundations, and say what's causing that behavior. And it all comes down to fear. Because what's going on, when you're in a relationship and you go, oops, I wasn't aware of this person's, now that I'm getting to know them a bit better, there's things I don't like about them, and there's things I'd like to change. So the question is, if you look at that relationship, what is stopping you from saying, is this the right relationship for me or not? Asking that question and being honest with yourself. And what's preventing you from saying and looking at that person and say, look, we've been together 6 months, we're married, we've been together 3 years, we've been together 5 minutes, whatever it is. I don't think this is working for me. I don't think this is the right relationship. I understand now a bit better about who you are, a bit better than I am, and being completely honest, this isn't the right relationship. So what we need to do is end it. Now, what would prevent you from doing that? Fear. You're worried, I can't do that. What would people think? What would happen to my finances? What would happen to all of this? So, and I'm not talking about just giving up on a relationship when you have a little misunderstanding, but people know, or they should know, if they do this work on themselves about understanding who they are, which is why it's so important, whether that you'll start to become much more aware of whether your life situation is really right for you. And that can be not only in your marriage, it can be in your career or your business or in anything else you're doing. You start to, coming back to my other work, using your brain the right way, getting a different awareness that this is not the right situation for me. I need to end it. No hard feelings. It's just the way it is. The only thing stopping you from doing that is fear, as I say. But that is the right decision, or it could be the right decision. If deep in your heart, you're in the wrong relationship, and you can only really uncover that when you start to do some work and start to get rid of your fears. When you know that, then the right thing to do is end that relationship. And one of the really interesting things that I found, because a bit like that TV program you were talking about, I've done a lot of study myself on what's the difference between people in a great relationship and people who are struggling in a relationship. And the people who are in a great relationship, one of the things I noticed, and generally it's subconscious, or it's almost always subconscious, they don't have a fear about that relationship. It's almost like they're there they are there because they want to be. And they have a degree of self-confidence and self-knowledge to say, I love being in this relationship, but if we woke up one day, or if my husband or my wife woke up one day and said, look, this is no longer right for me, I'm sorry, I'd go, okay, well, if it's no longer right, it's no longer right. And it's meant to be. It's meant to be that we end this relationship now, and I'll move on to another one, and I'll find someone better, and I'll view this whole experience of being with this person as a wonderful gift and a wonderful time in my life. So there's no expectation, and that doesn't mean they would, as I say, they drop the relationship at the instant something happens. It's the opposite, because when you're in a relationship because you really love being there and you're not afraid of being yourself, that's exactly who you are. You are yourself. You're not afraid to express yourself and how you feel. You're not worried about upsetting the other person. You're not worried about making a mistake. You're not worried about doing the wrong thing. And what happens then? You have a great life and you're happy. And when you are having a great life and you're happy, what are you? You're super attractive to your husband or your wife. So the people in great relationships, they do this automatically. They have this almost an unspoken feeling that we're here because we want to be, but hey, if at any time in the future it's not working, well, we can move on. And ironically, that brings much greater commitment to that relationship because they're there fully in that relationship. They're there because they love it. They're not there because they're afraid that it's, you know, the best they can do. And they're afraid of not being in it.
I love the way you broke that down, because actually you're right. I mean, when a good relationship, you know it, people are not afraid that, listen, if something goes wrong, we're okay to part. And almost it creates the reverse reaction that it never happens or it cannot happen, because you're already like, you're not worried about the relationship. I think that's the key. You're in it, but you're not worried about it. It's like, it's all good. We're living the moment, we're enjoying it, but we're not worried about like what goes wrong. What if it goes wrong? If you're constantly thinking about it, I mean, to your point, you will create that. It's just unbelievable. But now I want to go back to, people usually are dating or just, looking for the right person. And we hear that, I'm looking for the right one. It doesn't matter what male, female, doesn't matter. And the problem, we're talking marriage, but a lot of people are afraid to get into marriage in the first place. So they're trying to figure it out. And they're not into the discussion about the marriage. And then when because that's the thing, they're afraid to talk about it, because at least in early stages. But when you said like you shouldn't be afraid, you have to ask, right? I imagine someone, you go to someone right now, people are listening, like, I don't know if I can do that. You go to someone's like, hey, listen, I'm looking for someone to marry. let's see, are we gonna be a match? I mean, people are not gonna go do it that way because it's almost unheard of. But almost it sounds like that's the way to go. I mean, like, I'm serious, I'm looking for someone for a serious, relationship. We have attraction. How this is going to work? I mean, this is how, my expectations are and things like that. Almost like putting everything on the table. But that's not how the real life works. I mean, people are always kind of afraid. They kind of, again, they put all these little barriers. They want to test the waters. They want to see how it is. And a lot of time before actually a marriage commitment is even made, or the decision of entering into a marriage relationship. Because you have and people sometimes they don't even get into it, period. They don't marry. They just stay because they feel that that's a safer way. Doesn't work, I'm out. Same concept, except without a paper to document it and a financial, aspect. So that's amazing how that plays. But you're right. I mean, if someone really is confident about themselves and know what their values are, shouldn't be a problem to put, this is who I am, this is what I'm looking for, and then you get to know that person. I'm looking exactly for that person, and then now you see if it works. And frankly, the way I see it is that people enter a relationship, and it evolves. The relationship really evolves, and then you'll find yourself to a point where, especially if it works, you'll find yourself like you're almost thinking the same. I can think you finish the thought and that kind of thing. That's how it winds up. At least in my experience, that's the concept. And it's ideal. And again, by the way, I'm talking to someone who's like, well, maybe it works for you. I am on my third marriage, just so people know that, but 20 years and the third one. So I can tell you something went right eventually. But the idea is but you know what I mean? So yes, I mean, so for someone that's like, well, who you guys talking about this? What do you know about this? Well, you know a few tricks. I mean, at least in my experience, I tell people like, I'm on the third one. Oh, really? Yeah, well, third one is the charm, as we say, right? But it works. And it's not about that. It's really just about finding someone that you actually have not only chemistry, but the idea that, I can see the expectation of the person. I know what they need, what ticks, what doesn't, and stuff like that. And it kind of almost becomes like you become a one unit, literally. And that's not an easy thing, but it works. And to your point, the first thing is that you're not worried that it's going to end. You don't even think about that, and you're willing and ready that if it happens, it's going to happen. You're not going to do anything about it, so then that's kind of removed from the equation. And so what would you tell to people before, when they're in that discovery phase, to like really put it down on the table, like, hey, I know, like I discovered my values. Is there a way to actually break that down to your other counterpart?
Well, I think one of the biggest issues is, and you mentioned everybody does this a certain way, okay? And I think part of the problem, one of the major problems we have in society is that because everybody is doing something in a particular way, we all think that must be the right way. You know, it's not just marriage and relationships, it's finances, it's your career, you know, things like goal setting. We talked a little bit last time about goal setting, but it's really interesting. If you go the average personal development seminar, where people go to learn how to make money or whatever, the success rate, the acknowledged success rate, is between 2 and 3%. In other words, 2 to 3% of people who do goal setting and personal development succeed in achieving their goals. Now, you'd have to say, you know, if you went to a heart surgeon and said, "What's your success rate for heart operations?" and he said 2%, you're going to say, "Well, you're a useless heart surgeon, aren't you?" And he'd say, "But, you know, that's the industry standard." You say, "Well, there's something very wrong with heart surgery. It's completely down the wrong track if there's only a 2% success rate. We've got to try and fix that. We've got to try and do something differently." But when it comes to relationships or our career or anything else, we just say, well, even though there's a vast majority of people aren't succeeding, they aren't getting what they want, whatever they're saying still must be right. But it just doesn't make any sense, does it? So I think we need to, and this is what I'm trying to do in the book and what I've been trying to do in my own podcast and my coaching programs that I've been doing for the last decade plus, is try and show people that just because everybody says something's a certain way, if it doesn't work, then it's pointless. You've got to find out what does work. And one of the things to really come back to your question about how do you know, you're getting into a relationship and what do you do and how do you figure out whether it's the right one? You need to take away that whole question as to really, is this the right one? Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to figure it all out with incomplete information. And it's a bit like trying to set a goal and saying where you want to be in 5 years. And you have no idea where you want to be in 5 years. And where you're going to be is probably somewhere completely different to where you think you're going to be. But it's the same with a relationship. Instead of trying to figure it all out in advance, what you need to do is work on yourself and say, I need to understand who I am, what I really want out of my life, and what fears are stopping me from being myself. Now, if you just put your focus on that, one of the things you do when you get rid of the fear of being yourself is that you allow yourself to act in a free way. So you don't go into anything worrying about, is this the right decision? Have I got all the facts right? Have I analyzed everything? I need to make sure this is the right decision. You trust yourself because you know that things are going to work out the right way, because you don't have a fear about what's going to happen, about things going wrong. So you just go, and it doesn't mean you go blindly into things, quite the opposite. That means you hold back and say, well, I don't think this is quite right just yet. So we'll just have fun. Maybe we'll move in together, or maybe we'll see each other or whatever. We don't need to get married and whatever it is, because here's the other thing. There is no standard formula or what a marriage needs to look like. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different relationship. Everybody has different rules. And you can have your own rules. You don't need to live by the rules of what society says, which is you have to do this and you always have to smile and you have to last till the end of your life being married to this person and all these things. These are all just ideas that we've been given, expectations, which if from a marketer's point of view, you mentioned right at the beginning, is a great way to keep people feeling unhappy, because you can never live up to all these other expectations. You can only create your own expectations as you go along. So instead of having the only expectation you should really have is, I'm going to do the right thing in my life, even though sometimes it might be a mistake, it'll still be the right thing. And my life's going to turn out fine, and I am going to meet the right people. And if this person turns out to be the wrong person, then they're just a stepping stone on the way to finding the right person. We need to get away from this idea in general, and this is what my broader work about the brain is as well, of relying on our thinking brain to try and figure out for us what our life should look like. And it'll never do that. And it's the same with relationships. And that's why when you get into a relationship and you think you've figured it all out, But what are you really doing when you're figuring it out? You're worried. The only reason you're trying to figure it out is because you're afraid that you might make a mistake. But if you know yourself and you know, yeah, these are my values. Does this feel right? Well, it might feel right today, but it might not feel right tomorrow. That's okay. So you can enter into that relationship and you can work on it. And if it doesn't work, then you move on to something else. You know, and one thing I say to people is, do you feel, if you know somebody who's in a job, or have you been in a job and it didn't work out? Now, what did you say to yourself when it didn't work out? Did you say, oh, it's all my fault, this job didn't work out. I needed to work harder. I needed to try harder. I needed to learn a whole lot of new things. I needed to put up with a lot of it and just accept it. Or did you just say, it was no longer right for me? I realized it was no longer right, so I went and found another job. You don't think you're a failure for doing that. You don't think you're a failure if you've had 10 jobs. It's just each job felt like the right one at the time, but it turned out that it wasn't. And then you learn from it and you move on to the next one until you found the right one. And we need to have that view really with relationships. Get away from this whole idea that every relationship has to last for 50 years till the end of our life, that every time we meet someone and we commit to them, that's for life, you know. And if anything less than that, we're a failure. And everyone's going to criticize us and we're going to feel bad. And life will be bad for us if this relationship isn't the one, if this one doesn't work out. But who came up with that idea? It's not, I didn't see it written down in any law of nature to be like that. It's just an idea, a construct in our mind that we think this is the way it needs to be. But why? It doesn't need to be that way. So that's all, again, taking away from these fears. So as I say, this doesn't mean you jump into a relationship, because when you do that, you are acting out of fear. You're hoping it'll work. But you can step back and say, maybe I need to go a bit more slowly, or maybe we'll not see each other for a while, or whatever it is. Not to put so much pressure on yourself to make it be the one that has to work.
Thank you, Liam. I mean, that answers it, and I think that is the key to making it, because it's amazing how we have been conditioned. I think that's the key word here, is that the conditioning of society, of expectations, of almost like pressure that you have in from all over the angle. And so therefore you have to be in a certain way and almost sacrifice your own way just to satisfy everybody else's. And I think that is an issue. And to your point, I mean, I love what you said about it's all about you and making sure that and the analogy that you made about work is excellent, because we all have those examples in our lives where the job is not for me, you move on. And you don't need to stress, there's always going to be a better opportunity, and maybe that's the one that's going to last forever. And again, and no shame in the game in that case, right? And so, and again, even religiously, divorce is acceptable. In most of the religions, there's no frown about it. It is permissible, and it's not the one that you want. But to your point, if you enter in some engaged contract, and all like just business contracts, right? You enter contract, there is a clause to actually terminate the contract whenever. I mean, there's a time frame, and then you can actually get out of that contract. So it is an important piece. Now, everything that you mentioned is on your book. It is coming up in the pre-published concept right now. It should be available. When do we should expect the book to come up?
Well, I'm not sure, but I actually have a website called marriageuncounseling.com. If people go to that, you can actually sign up and you'll be notified when the book will be released. But it's not too far away. But that's probably the best way to, if people are interested in reading the book, which is, I think, is pretty interesting.
Well, it is.
They can go to marriageuncounseling.com, and I'll just let them know when it's going to be coming out. And I'll also be, as a pre-release, I'm going to be releasing a few interesting little bonuses with the book as well, which I'm still working on to really embellish and enhance and deepen the understanding of the ideas in the book. So I think people will find those interesting too.
All right, we're looking forward to it, and I will put the link into the description of the show so people can actually go and get all the preview, as well as the potential to know when this whole thing's going to happen, and look for it. I mean, it is a book. I mean, at best, it's good to read and get some good insights to see like how your your current position, whether you're married, I guess, or not, it's still going to help you. If you're not married, I think that's going to help you decide. If you're married, it may help you actually, resolve anything and just move on and be happy, whether with or without. And I think that's going to change the whole dynamics. So that's it. Any last advice for our audiences today?
No, I mean, I think one of the things about a relationship and a marriage is that it should be a place where you can be the best that you can be. That's the purpose of a relationship. And rather than be a place full of pressure and stress and problems, it should be the sanctuary in your life where you can retreat to, if you like, away. It should be the one place in your life that doesn't have stress and problems, that you can be with somebody who loves you for who you are, and you love somebody else for who they are, and you can blossom and be the best version of yourself. And that is not only the beauty of a relationship with someone else or an intimate relationship, it's the purpose of it, is to make you a better version of yourself. So if you haven't got that, if it's not the sanctuary of your life, then maybe you need to change your approach or look at something differently, or learn what we've been talking about what's important to you and what you're afraid of that's preventing you from really allowing that to blossom. And when you do that, when you deal with the stuff that's going on inside of you, rather than trying to fix everything that's happening outside of you, if you fix what's going on inside of you first, everything else is going to change outside of you, including your marriage. And that's the way it works. It's not the other way around. And society is set up to try and get you to spend money fixing everything outside of yourself. Fix your health, fix your finances, go to another course, do another whatever, go to marriage counseling. But that's the opposite approach. What you need to do is fix yourself first, and all of those things, as I say, they'll fix themselves. That's the way it works.
Well, thank you, Liam. This was great, and I appreciate it, folks. I hope that you've enjoyed the show, and please do check out the podcast with Liam Naden on the radio and our network, as well as let's look for the release of the book. And we're all excited, and we will look forward to it. Liam, thank you for being with us today. As always, it's a pleasure. And folks, we'll be talking soon.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We'll be talking soon. New day, new show, new topic, new guest. Stay tuned. Bye-bye.